Okay, this is going to be Wash 101. And so what we are going to do is we are going to basically paint this picture with a variety of watercolor washes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go about 1/3 of the way up, and I'm going to put a horizon line. This is not rocket science. And notice I am doing a very light job of it. And then about 1/3 of the way down, what you're going to see, this is about 1/3 of the way down, I'm going to start a mountain range in the distance, and I'm going to vary the sizes, but I'm not going to go into big swoops. I'm just varying the sizes a little bit. And the back one's going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the front one's going to end up with a little less because it's 1, 2, 3, and then maybe 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, because it's closer, so you're going to have less. And then the next one, I'm going to come in and I'm going to put maybe 3, 3.5 in. Okay, so now I have a distant mountains, I have closer mountains, and I have what I have here. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start wetting my paper. And what I want to do, this is going to be a wet and wet wash. So I think first, actually, what I will do is put a very, very big pile of color down here. So when I make my color, I want it to be generous, but I don't want it to be like too dark. Like this here is way too dark. So I'm generously adding water, and I'm making it so it's I don't know, I don't want to really call it light cream, but it's a little thicker than milk and it's a little thinner than light cream. So there I go, and I've made my generous pile of color. Now the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to wet the entire paper. And so what you're seeing me doing when I'm wetting the paper, and I want to use the least amount of strokes possible because I don't want to do what I call worrying there's sizing on this. So I'm going back and forth, I'm wetting the paper, I'm picking my paper up, and I'm making sure that everywhere around I can see that there's wet. Then I'm going to immediately go into my wonderful pile, and I don't know if you can see, I'm really putting a lot of this in the brush. And then I'm going to start from the top, and I'm coming down, and I keep on adding more to the brush, adding more to the brush, and I'm coming down gently all the way from the top to the bottom. Now this one's my sky, so I want it to be pretty pale, and then I'm going to add one more time, and then I usually end up gently going from the bottom all the way to the top. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure that this is even. When I pick up my piece, the color will move. I will grab a piece, and that's not good. Somehow or another I got quinacridone on there. I will have a piece of paper towel, and I am going to clean off the edges here with my paper towel because I don't want any of this to bleed back in. And then I will thoroughly dry my piece. Okay, so you can kind of see that I wasn't totally 100% successful. Here, when I dried off my edge, I did not catch, there was a little bit under the thing, but that's okay. When I paint like this, usually the last 1/4 of an inch Doesn't really make any difference all around because the matte's going to cover it. So I'm pretty happy with that. It's very even all around. So step number 2 is I'm doing the same thing. This is called a wet and wet wash, and it's not gradiated. It's just a straight wet and wet wash. But this time, I'm going to bring my water over here, and I'm going to start at the very, very top of this mountain, and I'm going to use my thing to wet this, trying to go back and forth, and I'm going to wet all the way down again. And I actually have enough of this, of the puddle, that I can just go back into my puddle. I might want to put a little more water in it just because it may have dried a little bit, but I have plenty in this puddle to go back in for another swipe. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to come here and I'm going to put this on my paper, and I'm gently adding this color in, and I may decide that I want it a little darker. So when I come from the bottom up, I might just add just a little more, and making sure that this has, but now that's evenly. Now I don't want to keep on going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, because as I said before, what you will do is you will end up worrying the edge of the paper. And it's interesting, that whole thing I was worried about here has just about disappeared. So here I'm getting my edges kind of clear. I'm going to keep them clear. And then I am going to dry my piece one more time. So now I'm going to use another glaze, and I am going to actually take this piece from here to here, and I'm going to use that again. Now I'm using a different color for this. So I'm going to clean up a little bit of this is my color here. I'm going to clean up a little bit of this. And then I'm going to get my next color. And my next color I'm going to use with Prussian blue. Now, one of the reasons I'm using Prussian blue, I don't know if you can see here, is that Prussian blue is a little bit greener than the cobalt. It tends to kind of default to the green side. So I have a nice pile. I don't need quite as big of a pile of the Prussian blue as I did for the cobalt, because I'm going to paint a lot less. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wet my paper. But this time I am just wetting my paper right in the second mountain down to the surface of the water. Okay, and so I'm going to wet it down to the surface of the water. And I want to make sure that it's damply wet, it's wet all over, but that it's not, I'm not making it super wet. I'm going to load my brush again, very well loaded. See how I load my brush? Then I'm going to start again here, and I'm putting this other color in. Now with this other color, it's going to, not only will it darken my mountains, it will also make them slightly greener. And green is warmer than the cobalt. The cobalt is kind of a neutral blue. Prussian is a warm blue. So it also helps bring your mountains a little forward. And then one of the things I do when I test my paper is I use the back of my finger to test my paper to see if it's dry. And it's not quite dry enough, so I'm gonna give it another little blast. Okay, so next I'm going to do something a little different. And for this one, I probably will use a round brush. You don't have to, but I am going to use a round. These are, I think they're called grabbies. I really like them. They're a quill brush, which you can see they have they'll hold a lot of water, but they'll actually point really well. So I'm going to take the same brush. Now this time I am not taking it and wetting it first. I am just filling my brush up. Again, I think you can see I'm filling my brush up with this lovely color. I don't need a lot of it. And then I'm going to go, and I don't use just the point of the brush, I use the body of the brush too. I just want to make sure that I keep my line going there. So I'm going to take the point, kind of the point of the brush, but I'm generously adding some color in here. And then I'm going to just pull this straight across to here, making sure that I have plenty of color in here. So it pulls it one time more forward. And I can, if I want, well, I'm not gonna do that right now. So now I have that color. And now I'm going to take a smaller brush and I'm going to make a pile of a yellow of some kind. This is quinacridone gold, okay? And I'm gonna make this a little thicker in color than I used in the last one. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna let this dry just a little bit, because what I'm going to wanna do is I'm going to actually force a few blooms here. So I'll test it off to the side and see how it goes. Now, you see how quickly that went? That means I want to dry it just a little bit more. So I'm kind of just doing a little bit of drying. I could wait a few minutes or a minute, not really more than a minute, because I want it to still be wet. So what you're going to see me do is I'm going to put little, and I may actually make this a thicker color because I want it to be a darker color. I'm putting little dots in and they grow. And it's going to look a bit like I have a tree line here. I'm gonna wait a little more. These trees are gonna be a bit fuller than the rest because I'm still thinking it's a little too wet, dry. I might just hit it once. That wasn't a whole lot of a hit, but it was hit once. Okay, and now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to, yeah, I like that a little better. So it's still doing a little bit of the moving. Actually, I over dried it ever so slightly, but it'll still be okay. Yeah, it's still a little damp. And what you'll see is I'm varying the various sizes. I'm not, it's not all the same size, because what I want it to look as if there's a line of trees coming in there. Okay. Then I can just start doing some fine little details. So I might end up putting I'm going to just put some kind of reflections in the water. So I'm just lightly, and this is very lightly, putting some green lines in my water. And then I can take that same, I'm going to go back into the next color, and I'm going to put some very fine lines. And I mean, I'm hardly touching. I'm also going straight across and I'm using this almost as a dry brush. I don't know if you can see that brush is very dry, so it's kind of dragging and giving some texture. And I'm coming like this. And then I might, at the very, very front, go a little more than dry brush. So I'm rounding off my brush a little bit here. And I may actually put a little more in the way of some texture, just a little tiny bit. Okay, so now I'm going to do a quick dry again. Now I could use a very, very, very fine brush, like a liner, if I want, and make a darker color. Let's just say I'm making this a darker blue color here. And I could just kind of try to come down and make some little lines here. Now, and I do want to make sure that if I do that I don't make these evenly. These are just, kind of dots and dashes. We don't want it to be perfect. The other option that I frequently use is just use a Sharpie. So this is a black Sharpie that I just use, and as I say, dots and dashes. You don't, I'm not going to put all the branches in. What you're going to see is you're just going to see a little bit of the bottom of the trees in the shadow. And I can sketch across here, but I'm not making a hard line. What I'm doing is I'm just doing a little bit of sketchy stuff in here. And just a little tiny bit of sketchy stuff. So it kind of browns that. Sometimes I will also take just a little bit of the blue and come like right down at the very bottom and also ground it a little bit, just to kind of have the feeling that there's some more stuff. And you could also take another color. I just used a little bit of the green, or the two colors that I had, and make some more shadowy shapes here on the very bottom, like there's some shadows. But again, this is just extra details. You don't have to do it. It just kind of, sometimes it really adds a little tiny bit. And if you add too much, you can just pull out with this. Okay, so then there's a little magic that I do next. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out. So this looks to me like it's, I don't know whether it's early morning or whether it is, what time. I always think of this as a moonrise in the very early morning. So what I'm going to do is I've got a brush here. I'm going to make sure that there is no color in the brush. Important that you make sure that there's no color in the brush. Then I'm going to pick a spot, and I don't want to pick it right in the middle, but I don't want to pick it too far off to the side. So I think I'm going to pick the spot right here. This is a good spot. And I'm going to gently, what I call worry. So this is clean water. And what I'm doing is I am just making a little circle. And as I worry this, because I used a non-staining color, I can pull up, and what you will see is the faintest of moons. Okay, isn't that nice? And then I'm going to use that same brush, and I'm going to come down a little bit. I'm not going to come right here. I'm going to come down a little bit from the area, and I'm going to just kind of squiggle, making it bigger at the bottom than it is at the top. And I'm just going to continue that. I could carefully try to get some sailboats out of here, but what I think I'm going to do, if I could only open this, I just had it opened yesterday, didn't I? Well, so I can also use a tool that will give me a little bit of a white. So I have this stuff that's called liquid paper, but right now I'm not getting it open very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this little bit of acrylic, and I'm going to come in. I'm going to make like a comma. I'm going to break the surface of the trees and come down in here. And I'm making the illusion of a few small sailboats. These guys are first thing in the morning going out, and they're very tiny. They're not big sailboats. You can't have a lot of, this is lake boats. And I'm going to put a little bit of that on. If you want, you could actually put the color in here too, but I don't feel that that's a necessity. And so here you go. Now you have a very serene scene. And as you can see, your sky is the lightest. Your next mountains are kind of back. And then these mountains start coming a little forward because of the green or blue that you're using. They're coming forward a little still. And now you've got a little bit of trees happening. So thank you very much.